meeting of the Southampton Village Planning Board of 2018. Happy New Year. Could I have a motion to open the meeting?
Open the meeting.
And I'll second it.
Second it.
I'll say yes.
Aye.
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 Are we allowed to do aye, or we have to do yes now?
No, you can say yes or
This
aye.
is a combined work session public meeting since we did not have the work session in December. And just the way that will happen is with each item on the agenda that we begin to discuss, I'll quickly ask the board members if we need to have any discussion about it. If not, we will then quickly move into the public meeting section of the same item. So we'll try to do this quickly as we have a ARB meeting following us here, so we have to move along. The first item on the tennis court agenda is Southampton 214 LLC for a court at 101 Pheasant Lane.
In the file is a decision approving the application for the tennis court as submitted. An affirmative vote on the motion will be to approve the court.
Is there any need to discuss this?
I was good with it.
Okay. Can I have a...
I believe it went east and west.
It did.
It did.
It did. All right, can I have a motion to approve the resolution as written by...
So moved.
Second.
Jane?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Alan? Pam?
Aye.
Aye. The resolution passes 5-0. Next is the tennis court for SH24 LLC at 24 Gin Lane.
There was a further submission on this, Mr. Chairman, on the 20th, the Nelson Pope Voorhees memo. I believe Kathy's telling me that we're in a position to be able to vote on this next month, Kathy?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, so you can, unless there's any discussion or comment from the public, put this over for decision only.
Questions, comments?
No, I was good with this. John Foster gave us a ruling on this, so I was good with it.
May I please note, John Fenner for the applicant, please note for the record that the final sentence of the December 28 Nelson Pope memo says, based upon NP&B's review, is recommended that the board adopt the resolution to approve the tennis court application. It complies with all the village code standards. Thank you.
Mr. Robinson?
You're adjourning it for the decision, correct?
Motion to adjourn for decision only.
Do I have a second to a motion to adjourn for decision only?
I'll second.
Jane?
Aye.
Steve?
On discussion, we can't approve this at this meeting pending your written decision? We can or we can't?
I don't know if they're going to be digging a tennis court in the next month. But...
True. Okay. Aye.
Alan?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution passes 5-0. 100 Halsey Lane for the court at 51 Pheasant Lane. Kathy, you have a
Yeah.
report on this.
Yep, there was a memo dated today. Did you receive it? Okay, great. Okay. This was a tennis court application. There were several issues with the plans, the actual tennis court plans. Those have been resolved, but they have not submitted a revised landscaping plan, so that needs to be addressed. So, and there was
This was your
one.
memo when you were talking about lines of trees and staggered trees and 5-foot
Yes.
trees and all that stuff.
That's correct.
Thank you.
So we're waiting for a revised landscape plan, or at least justification for the types of plants that they put in.
Is the applicant here for this application? I'm here. So you understand what's being asked of you?
Copy of the memo?
Yes. Okay, this is, we had an architectural review board hearing for the landscaping review board, and you had questions on the shrubs going around the tennis court that were on there.
The Architectural Review Board doesn't get
Not
to decide
architectural
upon the
review board.
landscaping for the
It
tennis
was
courts.
a landscaping detail.
Yeah. This is the landscaping for the tennis court.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has that been submitted?
That had been approved previously, actually,
It was approved.
in May of last year.
Yes.
Yeah. So the comments that were related to a site plan is, a flag lot review, didn't really look at the tennis court.
So you
From the
need
perspective-
another plan.
There's a bunch of comments that need to be addressed related to the standards that the planning board uses for tennis courts, yes.
Okay.
And these are suggestions from our ecologist, and they're,
All right. We'll take care of this and get back to you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve the request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes to 51 Pheasant Lane Tennis Court.
Jane?
Aye.
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Aye. Motion, application is adjourned. Moving into public hearings, 550 and 554 Hill Street. There is a letter in the file from the attorney for the applicant, Gilbert Flanagan, requesting an adjournment until the regular meeting in February. Is there any discussion, need to discuss any of this until we hear back from Gil? No?
Do we have a plan from them?
No, we have the original plan, but Kathy's asked them for additional details, which hasn't been provided yet.
they're, at this point, they haven't actually received quote-unquote sketch plan approval yet. So then they would have to, our last memo addressed items that would need to be included in the final plat application.
So we're actually waiting for them to give us a revised plan according to the ZBA guidelines.
To
Following what was approved.
They didn't, the planning board really should act on the sketch plan first and just say, and really just a matter of stating that this is a minor subdivision and that they should move ahead with a final, with a subdivision, a full subdivision application.
Based on which plan?
Then, based on.
Original plan?
No, they'd have to create a new plan.
Yeah,
and
that's what Steve's asking.
Okay, yes,
My
they'd have to
question was-
create a new plan.
Hasn't been done
Exactly. That has not been done.
Make a
Sorry.
motion to approve the request of the applicant to adjourn until the February meeting to 550, 554 Hill Street.
Second.
Jane?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Aye. Pam?
Aye.
Aye. Life Storage, 3 William Place. The public hearing for this application is scheduled for today.
I called council, just aside, I called council to see if I had to recuse myself because I have a unit in this storage place, which I pay for, so council said just make everyone aware of it, but I didn't have to recuse myself.
Good evening. John Reddington with GPI for the applicant Life Storage. Just to recap, we went before the ZBA was granted a variance for building footprint which exceeds the allowable 7,500 square feet. Received that variance November 16th, 2017. Went ahead and submitted for planning board, received comments from the village consultant, which we've addressed on this current set of plans that were submitted earlier, actually December 28, 2017, addressing things like lists of adjacent streets, the nearest hydrant, and so forth. So we're back in front of, for the public hearing. We did receive Nelson and Pope's current memo dated today, so we understand there's a few items left to address, but just to walk through our plan and the particulars of it. So we have 3 existing buildings at the front of the site, which we're going to demo and remove and replace that with one new building, 2-story building. So part of the demo, we'll remove the fencing in front of the site to kind of dress up the appearance, new building. The access fence, the site access fence will now move into the site and be a little less unsightly from William Place. So we feel that's a positive benefit to the application. Minor landscape improvements, most will be limited to removals of invasives and overgrown shrubs, again, to improve the visibility into the site. The current signage that's on one of the buildings now will be reinstalled on the new building. We've submitted a lighting plan which shows no full cutoff fixtures right on the building, no light spillage at the property lines, and that's about it. So, not sure if there's any questions from the public or the board, but we'd be happy to address them.
Thank you. Any questions from the board at this point?
Two furthest south pillars.
Two furthest west. There's three furthest west. So
Two west and two east.
yeah. So if
So we can see it the other direction?
sure. So as you
I'm sorry.
enter the site,
Those three, the three
cul-de-sac,
furthest east.
these three.
Yeah, southeast.
I'm sorry, east, you're right. So those are the demo buildings, and then in its place will be a new two-story structure.
And you're eliminating the office?
Yeah, the office now becomes part of this, and it's in this...
Part of the same building?
Yep. So this allows a little bit more parking for visitors and employees up front. This is the fencing that was referenced, so we move it from the site entry at the cul-de-sac into the site, so it's a little less visible to the public and the neighbors.
How are you on your parking calculations?
We feel we're good. We went through that with zoning board, so we increased the number of parkings in ratio to the increased building footprint.
Okay, only because I know that immediately to the east of the building and the office that you're tearing down, there's 8 spaces. Those 8 spaces are rented out.
Mm-hmm.
There's always like a boat or a...
Correct.
So I just want to make sure
Yeah.
you're taking those away from your parking calcs, because they're not really for parking, because you're actually using those to lease out.
Right, so the number of rental spaces or the area that is rented for parking remains the same.
Okay.
It's really the same footprint as what they have right now, just...
Right, they're taking, yeah. I think it's a little bit more square footage, because there's like
Right.
one building.
They're not changing.
No, I'm just looking for that.
Thank you. Does anybody in the public have comment about this application? So Kathy, you were looking for a few more details?
Yeah, the comments that we have are related to, they're engineering comments for the most part. So those are detailed in our memo dated today. We had also identified, done a secret review. We did the part 2 and part 3 and concluded there will not be any significant adverse impacts. and I would recommend that the board adopt the neg deck. That can be done tonight, especially if you're going to close the public hearing.
In view of the fact that there's no public comment or problems with the application, and in your recommendation that we adopt a neg secret deck, may I have a motion to do so?
So moved.
So I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And most of your stuff is on drainage, as I remember.
Yep.
Elevations.
Yep.
Some,
And would it go backward?
yeah,
Okay?
it goes downhill, definitely.
The plot.
So, yeah, we have those comments, we'll address those, things like curbing details and notes on those details. Our intention is to submit prior to the work session on the 29th, and then our assumption would be it would be up for decision at the next planning board meeting, is that correct?
Well, if you can get your questions resolved and answered in soon enough so that it can be reviewed, we would be able to evaluate making a decision at the regularly scheduled meeting. Again, in view of the fact there's no public comment, I would recommend we move to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second. Aye.
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 Aye. Public hearing is closed. All right. Baglat Landscaping, 28 Gin Lane. I asked at the last meeting, Kathy, if you would go take a look at the screening along the eastern edge of the
Yes.
property. Is that right? The western
Yeah.
edge? No, the
It's the
eastern edge of the
eastern,
property. Where the driveway currently runs. Or what did you find?
The hedge that is there, and I didn't look at it personally, Chick Voorhees was out here during that time, so he looked at it, and he said that it is a very substantial buffer, and that the views from where he could see along Fairleigh Road were blocked into the site by that hedge.
And I went there today, and I would totally agree that substantial hedge.
There's a note in a new letter from a neighbor in the file discussing the presence of the parking lot. I noted in your review that you mentioned that the parking lot was going to be screened with a hedge in addition to the screening that's alongside the road. What is the nature of the hedge that is going to be provided to screen that parking area?
I don't know the specific species. Pull it out, take a look.
That parking area is not on the flag lot.
Mr. Bennett?
Right? That parking area is not on the flag lot.
I'm just
No,
asking her a question.
No, but I think it's
Yeah.
important for the record. That parking area is not on the flag lot, it's on the front lot, which is not even part of this review. But it's appropriately screened.
Would you agree that the species they're using are boxwood? Yes, boxwood.
Which, until it gets really cold, tends to be evergreen.
Yeah, and mine don't ever tend to lose their leaves somehow.
Depends upon how well they're built.
Does anybody else have questions for Kathy before we get into, open this up as a... So did we adjourn the public hearing?
The letter, if the letter is accurate, it doesn't say that. It says it's where the 6 is 6 meters. It's between the guest house and the parking, which is, there's a parking area there.
Right.
That's all. So council said it's a different property, but the letter says it's the guest house parking, which are the two lots in between the guest house and where the road used to come in. It's this one. Not this one, but this one here. These two. So he must, this number
Right.
6 must be there,
Right.
not there.
There's also that part.
Well, that's another one. That's in the front lot. The one on the north lot has 2 parking areas there for when I 9 cars, that's all, and that's in where the old access road along the edge used to be. And I believe the letter that we got relates to those parking areas, apologies, council, not the front parking areas that goes to the north. Mr. Quinton's letter seemed to be concerned about.
And the guest house to the north is not part of this application?
No,
It isn't?
no, that's part of the tennis court application. The guest house to the north is on a separate lot.
Okay, so I thought we were dealing with the front lot to the north, if we're not?
The flag lot is the oceanfront lot,
No.
which has a flag, that's the old,
The old flag is the old toward the ocean. Back to the north is a lot where there's going to be, it appears to be a tennis court and a guest house and 2 parking spots.
and those aren't before you. The only thing that was before you prior
Is the oceanside lot.
No, let me just what was before you in the first part of the hearing, your meeting, was the tennis court, which you adjourned for decision. That is not part of what you're hearing right now, only the oceanfront
But
lot.
just to be clear, the flag it's part of the lot. If this property were to ever be sold, the flag exists, and it's on the lot, and it would be
That's
the
why we're here.
access point.
That's why we're here. That's why we're here. But we agreed, you'll remember, to a covenant that said so long as the lots were
Right.
functionally the
It's not
same,
as though
that
there's
flag
2
would...
properties with an easement, which you've got a driveway going across the second property. You really do have a flag lot. That's why we're talking about it here, even though you're not using the flag part of the lot for the driveway.
I understand that, but, that doesn't give you jurisdiction over the parking areas
I understand,
in
but
the front
we do
that
have
are not a
jurisdiction
flag
over
lot.
adequate screening. It talks about adequate screening, which is what we're
Flag lots,
talking about.
yeah, the flag lots.
It was screening for those parking areas.
They're talking about this is the
Right,
flag,
right.
but they're not using it.
Right.
But in the event they do use
To the
it.
extent that the parking areas are not on the legal flag lot, i.e. not on the oceanfront lot,
Okay, I understand that.
they're not before you.
But you still are putting a hedge around it anyway.
Yeah, which is great stuff, but I'm just saying, well, kudos to us, but it's not part of this application.
In any case, we had adjourned the public hearing. I would like to reopen the public hearing to get any additional comment. I don't really want to rehash all the same stuff we talked about at the last meeting, but if anybody who hasn't spoken before would like to speak or add some additional comment, that would be now's the time to do it.
I'll be very quick. John Bennett for the applicant. I do want to have everyone aware of the fact that there is a memo from Ms. Eisman, December 4th, updated January 8th. The result of the additional site inspection does not change the opinion, their opinion, that it is appropriate for the planning board to approve the proposed planting plan. So your consultant has recommended that you approve it. I also have some photographs, for whatever they're worth, of essentially what Ms. Eisman's report says, which is the existing screening between the properties are quite substantial. Lisa Hoyer from InterScience took those photographs. I think you have additional copies of them. But we're just going south, 2 Fairley Road, 2 hedges, 1 hedge on the neighboring lot, 2 hedges on lot 28 property, 1 hedge on the neighboring lot, 3 hedges total 12 inches. 12 feet. Excuse me, thick. Going to the south, 3 edges, 12 feet thick. Further south, along 6 Fairley Road, 1 hedge on lot 28 property, screening and vegetation on the neighboring lot. 8 Fairley Road, 1 hedge on lot 28 property, plus screening and vegetation approximately 4 feet thick. And then 10 Fairley Road, 1 hedge on lot 28, approximately 4 feet thick. So these are just visual proof of what's in the Nelson Pope and Voorhees report. Then I just wanted to make sure, and I'm confident that your counsel will bear me out on this. When you're dealing with a flagpole lot, it does not, as has been suggested incorrectly by one of the objectants' counsel, give you full-blown site plan approval authority. That's what the code says. It talks about screening, but I just thought it might be helpful to give you some more comfort. I just pulled a random grab of a bunch of flagpole approvals by this board. 61 Pheasant Lane, I'll read just the relevant portions. The planning plan a robust and sufficient to screen the driveway access and proposed improvements. 51 Pheasant Lane. The approval was to ensure that the adequate screening and buffering is provided. 410 Ox Pasture Road, sufficiently screening neighborhood properties. Lucy Bushman for flag lot review. The applicant screens the perimeter of the property with hemlock trees, and the board approved it. Again, it's screening is what the board's jurisdiction is under this relevant section. We've said it. We've demonstrated it. That's what you've demonstrated it. That's what you're here for. Your consultant agrees, I believe. There's a few more, and we like the board's approval. I think we've done what we're supposed to do, and we've done it handily. And these arguments about full-blown site plan review are simply a diversion. We'd ask you that you ignore them.
Thank you. Mr. Bregman.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. I'm Jeff Bragman. I represent the neighbors in opposition. And I want to start out by saying there is a new issue here today, and it relates to an issue that we did discuss a bit the last time I was here, but I want to refer the board to the statute that it's operating under. And that statute says that no building permit shall be issued for a flagpole lot until the site and landscape plan shall have been approved by the planning board, and that they shall provide for adequate screening and buffering of the flagpole lot in relation to adjacent lots, and the required screening and buffering shall be deemed to be a continuing condition to the use of the flagpole lot. We're in a floodplain area, and in this case, when you look at the statute and it says screening and buffering, it wouldn't use those two words if they meant the same thing. They don't mean the same thing. And buffering includes impacts that this project may occasion to surrounding lots based on runoff and storm surge. And those issues are issues which this board must examine. And if you look in Chapter 62, which is the chapter that imposes the floodplain requirements on this lot, they recite the policies about which the town of the village was concerned in enacting those floodplain regulations. And the concerns included concerns from impacts and injury and damage to human health and property from erosion and runoff within floodplain districts. And the policies refer to damage to property and human health. And they also refer to the fact that applicants should, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's nearly a quote, take responsibility for the potential consequences from the development that they plan in flood areas. So we are saying that there is an issue that the applicant has danced away from and danced around and never adequately answered to any board that it's appeared in front of. And that is there going to be fill, and a substantial amount of fill, placed on this property? He has stated that as a fact before the Board of Historic Preservation and Architectural Review, and he has stated that they needed to place fill in order to place a septic system on the site. And they pointed to that requirement as the reason for having that 400-foot retaining wall on the western side of the property. We gave an engineer's memo, which I would ask you to incorporate into this record, but I've brought the engineer with me today who wrote the memo, who stated that there was no need for any fill to install a septic system on this site. And one of the earlier plans with the latest house design on it showed 3 feet of fill on the western side of the property, which did not appear to connect. The drawings did not show how they would resolve that fill on the rest of the property. So it was just sort of a notation that there was going to be 3 feet of fill, but the plans, when you looked at it from the other side to figure out in 3 dimensions how it worked, didn't resolve the issue. So we say that there is an outstanding issue where the applicant owes you a clear answer as to whether or not they're putting fill on this site. You should also be aware of the fact that there's a requirement for the applicant to submit a stormwater pollution prevention plan. And the last time we were here, the applicant's attorney said, oh, go ahead, go take a look at our stormwater pollution prevention plan. It's there to look at. Well, the December 5th NPV memo said it was inadequate, that it didn't address discharge points from the site for existing and proposed conditions based on a 100-year storm, that it lacked mapping and support narrative of where the stormwater flows would be directed, and it lacked narrative about the potential for discharges to reach surface waters via roadways, and it lacked narratives about the overland flow that would be directed from the site. So we're here again and again and again and again, and we will stand up every time we have an opportunity to speak to the boards of the Village of Southampton. And what we're saying to you is very simple. You have the authority and the responsibility not just to look at trees, not just to look at the thickness of a hedge on the eastern side of the property. The serious issue that is confronting you here, and in this site plan review, which you're charged with under Section 113 F6, 116.11 F6, is to make sure that this project adequately buffers, not only screens with trees, but buffers the impacts that are going to happen or are potentially going to happen to the neighbors to the east. And we're located about 30 feet away from the property line with one of the most historic shingle-style houses out here. It's a signature house. It's one of the crown jewels of the Village of Southampton. That would be the Manger residence. And similarly, the Michaelchek is the same type of house. It's one of the most outstanding examples of historic architecture you have. It's close to this site, and they are owed a detailed plan that tells you exactly what's going on with runoff, buffering, and the potential for damage to these properties. And you haven't gotten an answer. And we didn't get an answer in front of the Board of Historic Preservation and Architectural Review because they said, oh, it's not our jurisdiction. We're not going to look at that. It's not our jurisdiction. We're looking at the buildings and the siting. Well, it is your jurisdiction. And we want an answer to those questions. And I urge you to, not put on the blinders that this applicant tends to suggest you should wear and look only at a hedge along the flag lot portion of the lot, but to look at the real substantive engineering issue. I direct that to Mr. Lemansky, who has some experience with that, and know before you go. And I'm going to say something that we've said before the Board of Historic Preservation and Architectural Review, and that is, when have you ever approved a plan that involves a major change in the natural terrain on one of the most historic oceanfront properties that you have? This is the oldest location that was ever developed as a collective summer colony. This was the first location. That's why you have these 5 gems of shingle style and related architecture. So we are asking you and urging you in the strongest terms not to just look at the thickness of the hedge, but to insist that the applicant give you a complete stormwater pollution prevention plan that details, that gives us enough quantitative information so that the engineer that I brought with me today can evaluate it on a scientific basis, and we know before you do anything that this will adequately buffer us from harm. That's your job. And I shouldn't have to argue the point because it's stated in the statute that I just quoted. It's not that difficult to understand. They wouldn't say screening and buffering if the two words meant the same thing. So please, let's get some more information and continue this hearing so we know what's going on. Thank you.
Can I refinish?
No, excuse me, we have another witness that I'd like to.
This is not a public, what are we're talking about stuff outside of
This
your
is the
jurisdiction.
continuation of a public
No,
hearing.
it's not,
It's the- excuse me, it's the continuation.
If he's not, shut him down. If he's here, not here to talk about screening and planting, the SWIP plan is under the jurisdiction of the building department. The FEMA regulations are under the purview of the building department. John Foster is the FEMA
Here's the
administrator.
filibuster.
Filibuster,
Here's
you're the
the
filibuster.
filibuster.
The health department
Here's
has
the
approved the septic system, and the retaining wall was given a building permit. Can you please, the filibuster, stop this filibuster?
We're making a simple point. The statute uses the word buffering. It means something. It gives you the power to look at whether this project really is buffered. We have an engineer who wants to talk about what's missing from the stormwater plan. It's relevant to what you have to decide.
Oh, it's the stormwater plan?
So Kathy and Bo, correct me if I'm wrong.
Why do we have a
As-
memo on
as
the
a-
stormwater
Would you
plan
let the board
in
member
this
finish,
case?
please? He doesn't, he's a filibuster.
Roy.
So the retaining wall and the fill for a septic system is under the jurisdiction of the Suffolk County Department of Health Services. No matter what we say, they'll tell us what is going on, and the SWIP goes back to the building department.
Correct.
And I think we need some definitive direction from Bo, because as far as I'm concerned, and as far as everything we've approved or not approved on the flag lots, since I've been on the board, is we're only concerned with the plantings and the screening on the flag, and sometimes the main body, but mostly only the flag. So is that our job? Or is our job to look at other things where we could be overruled on by the building department
An answer?
and by the Suffolk County Department of Health Services?
I'd be glad to provide a memo
Thank you.
to the board at a subsequent time or include such remarks in a decision. Here tonight, we have this man trying to make a presentation. I suggest you let him finish and then do what you have to do to accept public comment and consider closing the hearing or not. And I don't intend to answer this under these circumstances at this stage of the proceedings.
I'm fine. I appreciate that. Thank you, Bo. I just want,
Can I, let me just, you cited part of the code. There's another
Yes.
part of the code, 116-38. An application for a building permit for any used building or structure except one-family dwellings shall require site plan approval by the planning board. This is a one-family dwelling, so it does not require site plan approval by
let me
the
just
planning board.
be clear about what I was saying when I was last in front of you. I wasn't saying that you should conduct a full-blown site plan review. What I did was I read you the statute that defines your task, and I just read it to you again tonight. And I
just
said,
from my notes, because I didn't, what is that? What is it?
It's 116.11F6. Let me just make sure that's correct.
Correct.
That sounds great.
It's 116.11F6.
Okay, thank you.
So what I did last time was I read you that section because I was making a similar point that last time they came in and said you can only consider screening along the flag portion, okay? So I was reading you the statute because this is the statute that defines what your responsibilities and authority are. So I read you the statute in order to show you that under the statute, it was more than just looking at screening of the flagpole. It had to do with the impacts of the development on adjacent properties. So that was the way the applicant tried to narrow what you could do on the first hearing date that we had. I stood up and said, it's a broader task that you have. You're not merely looking at screening a flag lot. You're looking at the impacts that the project has all over the lot on surrounding neighborhoods. Now, tonight, we hear that all you can look at is trees. So they've retreated from the notion that you can only look along the flagpole, and they're now saying, well, but you can only look at things that are planted. And that's why when I read to you, I emphasize the fact that Section 6 says that it has to provide for adequate screening and buffering, because clearly they wouldn't put that word in if it didn't mean something different from screening. And what I'm suggesting to you is that's the hot button issue in this case, because we have heard from this applicant on this application that you're looking at that they are going to put fill on the western side. And whether or not you're correct that ultimately, Mr. Lemansky, the Suffolk County Department of Health Services will look at the septic system. But that does not mean that you get a free pass from looking at what you have to look at under the statute that controls you, which is 116.11F6. And that says, no matter what's going on, you have to determine whether this project is adequately buffered from the adjacent properties. We're telling you that and I brought the engineer back with me today. This is the man who wrote the memo, who said you do not need to put fill there. And we are concerned about putting fill on this property for two reasons. One, it's in a flood-prone area. It's going to redirect runoff and discharge. And we are afraid that it's going to adversely affect our properties. And two, it's not necessary to do. And three, it's related to the stormwater prevention plan that they've submitted. And you know what? Sure, it's submitted to the building department, but you're the planning board. Don't we want all the relevant information that can help you understand what's going on? We have a memo that's in this case from Nelson Pope and Voorhees on December 4th that says, guess what? The plan isn't adequate.
Not in your jurisdiction.
It's from the village planner, and it's directed to this board on this application, and it says it's not an adequate stormwater prevention plan. We're saying, let's get the adequate plan before you make a decision. What we're saying is, you got to look at this issue. You can't just wave this through and say we're not going to look at it. And if you're worried about what's in your jurisdiction, I know Mr. Bennett, is very formal about that.
But we don't need Mr. Bennett to tell us what. I mean, we know the SWIP isn't under our jurisdiction, and neither is the Suffolk County Department of Health Services.
But what is in your jurisdiction is an obligation under statute. Under the section 116.11F6, it obliges you to determine that the buffering for this project is adequate. We're putting you on notice. They're putting 3 feet of fill in here. We want to know, and you should know, what the impacts are going to be to the surrounding houses, which are among the most historic in the world.
Not in your
Excuse me, but I don't interrupt Mr. Bennett. I don't interrupt him. You've got some of the most...
Please, he said the same thing 20 times.
It's really, he knows the procedure. I don't interrupt him.
Yes, you do.
He shouldn't interrupt me. This is why I call it a filibuster. And what I'm saying is these are some of the most historic houses that you have. They're the first colony that was developed. They're the gems of Southampton. Protect them. Just examine the issue.
Thank you.
Can I just add something? Just Mr. Bragman had said that the memo from NPV about the SWIP was directed to the planning board. That is not correct. Otherwise, you would have seen it. It went to the building department.
Where it belongs.
If it said the planning board, it's an error. But they went to Tom Foster's office.
I didn't see anything that said that.
Yeah.
It's from the Office of Village Planning, and it's relevant to the issue of drainage and runoff. Why would you not want that information?
Because it's not within their jurisdiction.
Why would you not want that information?
Okay.
Any further comment?
Kathy, as far as you're concerned, the screening on this is okay?
As far as a flag lot review, yes. The screening
And
is
that's what's
fine.
before us?
And that's what's before you.
I'm okay with it. I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Well, to me, the case, I've looked through the code, there's discussion of the flag lot takes place in 3 places. And some of the discussion in the code is brief and leads to interpretation of what words mean. It talks about adequate screening. What's adequate? It talks about buffer. What is a buffer? A buffer could be, do we have enough space between the driveway and the hedge, or buffer could be much more than that. I would like to get council opinion on parsing of these words before we even begin to consider what the decision would be. I do feel like both sides have presented their cases and the public hearing could be closed.
You've heard it. Since it's typically only visual and not with these other issues, we probably need to find out. I've got at least a view. We can always decide for ourselves what council thinks. The law requires it flows into this committee, unfortunately, as opposed to all the committees.
Mr. Bennett did bring up several cases where we've also done flag lot review, and while 90% of those were just related to the landscaping of the lot, I do recall in some of them talking about whether or not the driveway would cause drainage issues to the property adjacent. We did discuss that, so it's not as though the drainage issues aren't relevant. We have discussed that.
Recently.
So could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Jane?
I would like clarification on the screening and buffering as far as what that entails. I would really like to know if we could put definitions on what they are.
There'll be a time for that, Jane,
Okay.
after
Okay.
the meetings, if the
Right.
hearing's closed.
Okay, I'm fine with closing it.
So you vote aye to close the public hearing?
Yes.
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
I'll say aye if we could still, having closed the public hearing, get to this issue. And maybe need to, depending on what the issue is, we may need to reopen
I
it.
would feel at the work session, we'll be discussing our interpretation of what the law says buffering and adequate mean.
If we get that, but as long as the matter is still before us,
The matter is still before us.
don't want to learn late. Okay, so aye.
Aye. So the public hearing is closed by a vote of 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Subdivision, 191 Bishop's Lane.
This one we got, Kathy, this was the one we had your memo for
This is,
in December.
there's a memo dated December 19th.
December, yeah.
Yeah,
Where you
and-
you dealt with the setbacks and the wetlands and all that stuff.
No, that was a different one. That's a different one. This one is on Bishop's Lane. This
This
one
is
went
the
through
former vet.
sketch plan approval. It's at final
Got
plat
that.
approval. Yeah.
That, somebody was fighting a lot.
What number is it, Troy?
191 Bishops, this is?
Yeah, and it's planning board
PB
number
2120.
2120.
2120?
2120, sorry. Yeah. You were dealing with the lot lines of the setbacks and stuff.
Yeah. That's next.
Lot moves.
Does everybody have a copy of that memo from December 19th?
Yeah.
Okay.
191. Yep.
Okay.
You concluded it had been adequately resolved,
Yes.
and there were markers.
Yes. So you want me to just go over what's in there?
Sure. brief synopsis would be great.
Okay, there were just several comments that we had regarding the final map, which were that the map needed to be revised to be clearly marked as a final plat, that it has the appropriate signature line item on the plat, as well as the indication that monuments would be placed at each of the corners of the lots. And that has been done, and it's consistent with the sketch plan approval, and a secret resolution was done as a neg deck previously, so there's no need to adopt a neg deck, and it's recommended that the planning board approve this subdivision.
So, Bo, do we adjourn for decision, or do we vote to approve?
Adjourn for decision.
So moved.
Second.
Second, yeah.
James, aye. Steve?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 83 Fowler Street.
Sorry. I was run ahead.
Got the,
I would think that we're ready for sketch plan approval, so that I can be on my way to the health department, which I've already filed anyway.
correct.
Yeah. I don't know, did it formally get sketch plan approval? Yeah.
No.
But you have a neg, the neg deck was issued.
Yeah.
The house.
Don't have a recommendation from NPD about whether they,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the recommendation is to approve sketch plan for the two-lot subdivision, and there are some recommendations for the final plat in the memo that was dated today. So there is the non-disturbance buffer that we have a plan that shows it, and so that would need to be the meets and bounds to describe that area, so that way that could be included as a Schedule A
That's
in
the
a
one down,
covenant.
that's down by the water.
Down by the water, exactly. And also, we're recommending the installation of concrete markers at that location, so a line of sight, if someone's mowing, they can see where the, have one person stand here and once, because you can't have markers along the whole buffer, but at least it should be marked in the field, so.
Did you say we have a memo in the file?
no.
Yeah, I did. So you didn't get one?
I
Okay.
got one.
You don't have an extra one, do you?
I got one. I read one.
Oh, you sent it to me, but I don't
Okay.
I don't
Oh,
have
it was on email?
Does this approval include
It's the only one that I didn't bring extra copies of,
Okay.
so I will.
But you emailed it to us?
It's
I
already
emailed it
approved,
to
I
you.
think.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm
So the
trying to keep
recommendation,
track
though,
of
is
how many
to
tennis
approve
courts
the
go the wrong
sketch
way
plan.
in order to enhance non-use. I'm just keeping track.
I'm not a tennis player.
I understand. This is the sideways tennis court.
You should probably abstain on this, Alan.
No, it's against the other property. I'd be annoyed on the basketball.
Anyway, the board already approved the tennis.
Kathy, I have 3 William Place, 28 Gin, 15 Hill. That's all I have from you.
Huh. Maybe I left you off that one.
So another copy?
You can have mine.
You wouldn't have an extra, oh, no, I guess not. The building department's pretty good about getting to it, so,
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was just late in the day.
yeah.
And I was worried that she wasn't going to get them, and I brought copies of literally all of the other ones. So,
It's not in the file.
oh, okay. Well, that does explain it.
Could I drop you an email?
Yeah, I can send it to you tomorrow. Sure.
Great, thanks.
Concrete markers.
John, are you aware of the recommendation that a restrictive covenant be filed regarding the non-invasive buffer?
Oh, yeah, we actually put that on a
Yeah.
map. That's more than, absolutely, no problem with that at all, yeah.
So that's
Thank
the
you.
next step when they come in for the final subdivision approval. They can, work out all these little details. Sorry about that. I thought I sent it.
I got it.
So at this point, we adjourn for decision?
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Aye.
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 Aye. East End Holdings at 38-42 Jobs Lane is looking for a lot line modification.
Madam Masada.
So this just came in as a new
Just came in.
application, so we need some time to review it. It had been a pre-submission previously, so it came in on December 28th. We need a little bit more time to look at what the package is.
This is where we're closing in a lot that has a walkway in the middle.
Knocking down 2 buildings and building 1.
Is that why we need that?
Yeah, and it has the walkway in the middle. They're getting rid of the walkway in the middle, yeah. But they are building, I guess it's 2 buildings that are separate, because it's still going to be 2 lots.
So the lot line is to somehow go in the middle? Or what?
Yeah, somehow.
You got rid of the
Kathy, what the plot is, we told us before, we're taking the walkway, we're going to make it into one solid space with at least 2 stories. The lot line is so that they can just line up the construction properly in the same area?
I wasn't aware of why they were locating the line, where they were locating it.
Oh, this one?
Okay.
So I just know that they are going to have 2 separate properties. One is bigger than the other. But we'll review it for the work session. I really can't provide any feedback.
Okay, so at this point, can I have a motion to adjourn this at the request of the applicant to the work session?
Yeah.
The work session. Have a second?
Seconded.
Aye.
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 And Kathy, just when we spoke about this a few months ago, it's very close to Lake Agawam. And I had suggested at that point that they do a IA system, an innovative and alternative system for the septic, which takes out the bulk of the nitrates, and it looks like they have a standard system there.
Okay.
So you can just take a look at that. Because they're right on the lake, and it's...
Thank you. I will.
Okay.
All right, site plan review. William Chappell at 122/132 South Main Street. I think this is pending a decision.
You have a decision in the file approving the modification of the covenant which presently exists. It's drafted such that I, as village attorney, will prepare a adequate document with the agreement of the applicant or not, and submit that to the chairman for approval, but the decision you have is granting the amendment and then making it subject to the text to be later agreed upon. So an affirmative vote will be to approve the request for modification.
Make a motion according to what was read by council.
Council, I'll second it.
Aye.
Subject to getting the thing and approving it, which you do.
Aye.
Aye. Beechwood Latch, 109 Hill Street. I still have not heard anything further regarding that.
Still in the zoning board.
Still the zoning board.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve the request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes the Beechwood Latch application to the February meeting.
Go to March.
Oh, March is good?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
All in favor? I've said aye, 5-0. 15 Hill Street, there is news.
There is news.
Fast breaking.
Now, did you receive a memo from me on this?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
I used to stutter on behalf of 63. My architect, Lucy, is on her way over.
Okay.
She should be here in a few minutes.
Okay. Do you want to wait on this one then?
Just switch it around.
Okay.
We have 30 Sanford Place. Is there any new information on that?
Nothing in the file as far as I've seen. Have you seen anything sticking out of the file?
No.
Yeah.
Look kind of skinny.
Yeah, it doesn't grow.
So what do you do with it?
Did we send a memo?
Yeah, we sent a letter, I thought. I sent a letter. Is there not my letter in the file, Pam?
And Kathy, it seems to me this was kind of simple. It just they had to lay out something to do with a handicapped spot, right?
Our request was simple. I'm not sure actually implementing it was simple.
This is your letter on the
Something hard to
28th
do?
of November.
All right, so there's
you
been
said
no
it was a
response to that. I would suggest you strike this from the agenda without prejudice.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, Jane?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
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 Aye. There's a memorandum regarding PMA Southampton at 21 Bowden Square. Would you like to summarize that, Kath?
Yes. In this case, there's a couple of details that we've asked the engineer to revise. One being that the hedgerow that they're proposing, we get some details about the plantings because we didn't want them to be too high. We didn't want to create a, feeling of being blocked in there. So although landscaping was a priority, we want to make sure that it's not going to grow too high. The other request was that there be a clear path for pedestrians, and the question is where should that go? And that, to me, is back to the engineer to propose something, whether it's within the driveway entrance and clearly marked, or within, in between some of the trees. And the challenge is that there's parking spaces on the street and there's no sidewalk, so where are we directing people to? So it is a little bit of a challenge for the engineer, but that's back on them. There was a note that they should correct the plan, so that way it's a village roadway, not town. And the other thing is that we did review the EAF and find that this can be also found there will not be significant adverse impacts, and the board could go ahead and adopt a neg deck if they like, or we could wait until the time of the public hearing. We could schedule a public hearing too, because there's enough information, we're close enough at this point. So maybe that's a good thing to do, schedule
Are
a
the
public
dry wells
hearing.
existing or going to be added?
What's the question?
Are the dry wells existing or going to
No,
be
they're
added?
proposed.
They're proposed. There is no,
No,
There's
just
one
one in the middle, I think. It's
drain,
a
and
puddle
we-
when it rains.
Yeah, there's one manhole, so we don't know what's
Yeah.
really under there, so.
so to your point that if they were rearranged, you could eliminate drainage onto the street, maybe move them more to the perimeter of the property or something like that?
There's just, there was one that, there wasn't enough topographical information
Right.
to determine whether or not it would be collected there, so we suggested moving one of the rings, exactly. So that way, the drainage from that area would be directed to that pool instead of going to Bowden Square.
And you've requested a topo be submitted or elevation?
Well,
be
this was
submitted?
in addition, instead of going out and shooting more topo, this would, basically solve that problem. So they could go out and do topo and say, we don't need that. So the engineer does have a copy of this, because I got an email from him. I don't know about
There was another
submitting
page, right?
doing a public hearing if the applicant's not here, though, because we don't know if they'll be available.
Yeah,
So
but there was another,
there is another page.
but they had a test hole on that page, right?
It's here for me.
It's really small.
Because I know I checked the calculations on the drainage, and the drainage is okay.
Yep.
And I think from the test hole that they had on page 1, you're on C2, right?
That's C2.
I'm pretty sure I saw a test hole that showed that the water was deep enough
Oh,
to take this in.
oh, yeah. No, Tom Dixon looked
Yeah.
at that, yeah.
Which I was surprised at, because I always thought it was high groundwater there, but test hole is test hole.
I'll make a note and we'll take a look, just to make sure.
Anybody make a motion to schedule the public hearing for this at the next?
We think, Roy, it's
On
better
second
not
thought,
to, since
yeah.
the applicant is not here. We don't know their availability.
Okay,
Yeah, so we
good
can,
point.
So we'll make a motion to
Adjourn for all purposes.
adjourn for all purposes.
I'll
The
second.
PMA.
Yeah.
Jane?
Agreed.
Aye.
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 Aye. Hampton's HDA.
Yeah. Look at this. This is,
I don't like these.
this is the Maybe Bank, right? Okay.
Inisato, Burke County Inisato, 21 South Main Street, for the applicant. If you recall, my partner, Gail Flanagan, was before you in October for a pre-submission conference for the construction of a bank building and accessory structures. That is a permitted use in the office district. Previous to that pre-submission conference, they were before the ARB as well to discuss the various aspects of the project, and they got a pretty favorable response from the ARB. Now before you is the formal application. Considering that there was at your work session a fairly extensive discussion submitted that possibly with this recap to refresh your memory, that it would just be referred to Ms. Eisman for a review and report. Unless you have questions, I mean, I have John here. Or if you have any other technical questions you'd like to be answered, I can take them down and have the responsive at your work session meeting.
Really? It's better than the first one. Moving it up in that way. Move it that way.
What you discussed in October is what is before you right now.
The only point that is subject for future discussion, but just I'd like to kind of raise, is that this particular street and this particular property and the adjacent property, Schmitz, and the property across the street with the post office and the other bank is probably one of the worst traffic areas in the village. And there's some thought that as the planning board, we should try to look ahead a little bit instead of just looking back and trying to fix things that have already happened, try to prevent things from happening in the future. So there's some thought that I'd like to just have as a discussion point for the applicant to consider, and of course it's not up to us, it's for the trustees to consider as well of the village, but perhaps some looking at providing an easement along the
West side.
North Sea Road, west side.
North Sea Road, west side.
East side.
East side.
The east side of North Sea Road, the west side of the property.
Right. To allow at some future date possibly for a widening of that thoroughfare. And that might entail allowing a closer reduction of the setback required for the building or whatever in terms of an incentivization to the applicant.
Are you saying an easement, or are you actually talking about a conveyance when you talk about a road widening?
Well, obviously, the trustees would have to be involved with any kind of a conveyance.
But
But we're looking for something where we would have the ability to say we want to widen this road, and then we wouldn't impact a parking lot that you have proposed there now.
Right. I will certainly relay that to Gil and the who will discuss it with.
And the way the layout is, I don't think it would really interfere much with your layout, and I think we could take into account the fact that we're doing that.
With the setbacks and stuff.
For some parking relief
Okay.
to get the queue for the drive-up.
I know.
And it involves other properties, so it's a trustee issue. It will
I will take it back.
to the fore.
I will take it back to my partner as well as the applicant, owner. Anything else?
Anything else, anybody?
No, I was actually concerned with the access from the Bowden Square because it's about a 4-foot elevation, but it looks like they've got a nice driveway sloping up to the site, so until we hear some comments from Kathy.
So adjourn for all purposes to your next meeting?
The next meeting?
Yeah.
Make a motion to approve the request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes the Hamptons HDA until the February meeting.
Second.
Jane?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Aye. we ready? 15 Hill Street?
Yep.
Never. I've never seen you.
Yeah. Especially this. It sounds like an idiot when you said that.
Another one to watch.
My name is Yu Liu. I'm the architect for 15 Hill Street. I have the revised plan for 3 dry stores. The original application, we put in asking for 5 divisions of stores. And we changed it. Now it's 3 stores, 3 dry stores. No office, no yoga, no nothing, just dry stores. 1, 2, 3. And then we have 3 handicap bathrooms for each store. And that's what we're proposing. We received a letter from the building department. For some issues that the board would like to hear about. And as for the parking, we had submitted a parking agreement from the past. I believe our attorney, Mr. Robinson, has reviewed it. I believe he has reviewed it, and I said it was okay. So I think that would...
If I did review it, it was so long ago, I can't remember it, so
You can't
let's just assume
remember.
for the moment I will review it again.
Okay, I have the package, I don't know if it is in our folder, or should I resubmit it?
No, it's in there.
It's in there someplace, hopefully. If not, we'll let you know.
Yep.
Okay, so you're gonna re-review it, okay. And we are proposing to do landscaping improvement in the back where we have dumpsters. We want to put nice fence around the dumpsters, and that's the improvement. And the lighting, we're just gonna have three storefront lighting, and then we have a lighting in the back door, and that would be the improvement we're proposing to do. And the accessibility, it was raised about the ramp. I would like to give everybody a picture of what the existing condition looks like.
This is the front or the back?
This is the front. The back it's not really for public. It's just for the front. For the front, if you can see, the sidewalk is actually sloped here, and at the building area it is level. And if you look at this pencil line, I drew a pencil line. I think Cassie should have a copy too.
On this?
Yeah, I drew a line, a pencil line right here.
Oh, yeah.
That's pencil. You can see it's pencil.
Yeah, I see it right here.
So you can see that's the level that I would propose to use for the what do you call it, the porch or the recessed area to go into it.
Entrance.
So we use this level, this level, and the ramp will be at this level, and this side is at this level, and this side we will have a step up, but definitely there's handicap accessible in the middle and to the left of the center.
So you're proposing to go
I'm proposing
in the middle, and then you can go
and-
left,
yes.
and you can go right?
Yes.
It's really slight.
And this is, we actually got the idea from the store Intermix. That's exactly the same kind of configuration. So, let's see. Yeah, Almond Street. Yeah, that's the thing that we're going to be able to address. And then as for the roof runoff, the building has been here. It's always like this. And there's absolutely no room for us to put in any dry wells because there's septic, utilities, gas lines all in this back area. And currently the water goes onto the Windmill Lane and goes into this catch basin right here on this corner. And we have discussed with building inspector, Mr. Foster, and he is okay with it.
So Mr. Foster is okay with the septic, and he's okay with the drainage as existing?
Okay. So you said you are going to provide something about the ramp other than this, or this is it?
I think
it's in there?
I think this is, it's written very clearly how it is done here.
We'll take a look.
But I don't know if it satisfies you, but if it's not, I will do more detail.
Okay. You might need a cross-section detail or something. But
Right, and I think you might need a rail on the side where there's a step.
So is that
Only
interior?
because, I mean, the New York State Code gives you 18 inches where you can go 18 inches before a rail is required. However, if this is a handicap entrance, I'd hate to see somebody get up in a wheelchair, come over, and then hang off the edge and end up on the pavement. So I think only because it's considered the entrance and the handicap entrance that you should consider putting a rail there, only because you're going to have people who are handicapped that may be in a wheelchair, and if you take a wheelchair even off of a 10-inch step, you could be in big trouble.
Yeah, I can see that it intermixed, and then they painted the yellow curve. The curve is painted yellow, and I have about 7 to 8 inches differences at the highest point, because this is like ramp like this. This is probably the highest distance from here to here is the highest, about 7 inches. The rest of them is fairly level.
How wide will the
So
ramp be?
what's the point about that?
What is what?
The 7-inch level, are you saying that that justifies
existing.
putting the railing in or not putting it in?
I don't think really we need it, but
I think the board is going to insist upon it for insurance issues, because if
Sure.
somebody falls off
I mean,
that
on the left
railing,
side, it's a grade. The middle, it's a grade.
yeah.
But the right side,
So
you
if
could have somebody go off a little ledge there.
yeah, if the board wants a railing, how long you're proposing, would want us to do.
I think just from where you come off grade, as you're looking at the elevation on the right side. So from where it goes level to where the sidewalk starts to slope off, where you could have a wheelchair go off the edge. That's all on that side.
Or tripping hazard.
I mean, if you want to balance it on the other side for an architectural reason, that's okay too, but
Okay.
just thinking about safety.
Yeah, sure, of course.
I'm thinking about insurance.
I was thinking about insurance.
How wide is the proposed ramp? Would it come out to where the bricks begin, or?
The ramp, or you mean the recess here?
It's actually-
The recess is about 6 feet.
So see this pencil line?
Yeah,
We're
I get that's the
flush.
height of it.
Yeah, we're flush.
But
And
it's
right
gotta come
about
out
here.
this way, right?
No, because you're flush with the sidewalk here.
What about here?
Right here, it starts to fall off, and that's what I'm saying. This is the existing. The proposed is 24 feet wide. It's a recessed entrance like this. So this would be your entrance, and you're flush here and here, and you're flush here. And this would again be recessed.
Yeah.
This being recessed, you have a ledge. This would be a ledge that somebody could fall off.
This is going back in, this
Yes.
isn't coming out this way?
Correct.
Oh,
Correct.
That
Yeah,
was
see,
my-
here's the recess right here,
okay, got it.
like that. Right here. You're proposing to
And it
recess
doesn't
the
go all the
entrance.
way down to the
And
corner?
this is flush, and that's flush. No, it's just it's kind of centered on the left building.
Is it centered on the middle gable?
Got it.
Only in the middle gable, it's recessed. So your suggesting me to put railings on the left-hand, right-hand side of the door.
Correct. East side.
Yes. Yeah. When I'm looking at the house.
Let's use east or west, and then we can avoid that confusion.
Okay, east side.
So right now,
We should slope it.
They're going to make this wall go farther back that way.
That's what they're doing.
Okay.
Right now, the door's right here.
Yeah.
They're bringing this in. So now, from here to here, it's level with this. Here's where this drops over.
Right.
So we
Right.
put a rail here.
Got it.
You have access here. You can go this way. You have access here. You can go this way. Or you can go straight ahead. I think it's a great idea.
we're in the historic district.
Yeah, but it's type 2, so it's just all interior.
This wall is
deals with that
actually
by just
back.
making it.
This level with the door.
This is existing.
Right.
And it's at least an exclusion.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, that's what it's type 2.
So that's good. Right here is very possible. So this you can enter every day. And on the recess, go this way. And on the recess, go that way.
So did you submit copies of this today?
I just have one copy today.
Okay, can you leave this one with me and submit others to the board tomorrow?
Sure. How many copies?
How many are required? 8, I think?
Yeah.
8?
And then I'll just take this one so they don't have to mail it to me.
Sure, okay.
Okay. I would suggest at this time that this be scheduled for a public hearing. I think we have enough information to present this and get public feedback. Okay. Let's actually do a scheduled public hearing.
Okay. So do the post mailings and all that. Okay.
And they can direct you on the building department.
Yeah, anything else you need from me other than, like, next time when I come, I will put, railings?
I'll let you know. I'll let you know, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll have to review this with fresh eyes and let you know if there's any other comments, but I think at this point we're close to.
Do I need to resubmit the parking part?
No.
Okay.
The parking improvements I mentioned in here were pavement. It wasn't the number of
Sometimes
spaces.
someone else dictates the letter.
The
Wait,
site,
just wait. I don't want.
Okay.
Okay.
the site plan that I took this out, you wanted the copy?
Yeah, that'd be
This
great.
is out?
Yes.
I will make a motion to schedule the 1616 Realty Company located at 15 Hill Street for a public hearing at the February meeting.
Second?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Alan? Aye.
I said aye, so Super Monday. Next meeting.
I think that covers all the items on the agenda. Can we do some minute approvals?
I thought it's not on? What? The one that Gil submitted for East End Holding? It was at the very last minute, so.
Oh, East End Holdings? We adjourned that earlier.
I must have missed it when you did that. Okay, not a problem. We only expected it to be referred to Kathy anyway, so, all right.
Yeah, I thought you were up and speak, but went right past you.
November 27th and December 4th are minute approvals.
I was not present on the 27th.
I think, Jane, you were here on the 27th. I was here on the 27th.
Yes, I was.
Yeah,
You were here on the 27th. Were you up to speed on it?
Yeah, I saw one of them.
Okay.
That was fine. I missed one, unfortunately, but that was a
I'll
different.
make a motion to approve the minutes as written for November 27th. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
All in favor, Jane?
Aye.
Abstain.
Alan, aye. Pam? Aye. And I vote aye. We'll vote on December 4th at the next meeting, Antoinette. The next meeting is January 29th. I know Pam will not be here.
That's a work meeting.
It's a work session. I will not be here. So do we have the rest of you, can we commit to being here on December?
29th, right now, I'm planning to be in the time zone.
I can say right now, yes. I know I'm going to be doing.
If anybody drops out, we got a problem. So let Jackie know if
Yes.
that's the work session. Then the public meeting on the 5th, I'll be here.
It's February 5th.
February 5th.
I'll be here for the 29th, definitely,
But Pam will not be here on February
and I
5th.
will be here on February 5th.
You will not? Okay, so we got a
I am
tenuous situation.
likely to be here on the 5th, it's Super Monday, and I think I'm
Right.
doing the Super Bowl in the village, so I think I will be here on Super Monday. Right now, that's
Well,
what
if
shows.
anybody has any issues, let us know, because that's a dicey one, too. We only have 3 people for that one. Okay, that said, with no further ado, no business to conduct, can I have a motion to close the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
So seconded.
Jane?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Aye.
Al? Aye. Thank you very much.